They dragged Alara to the center of the council chamber in chains that smelled of rust and old blood, barefoot on marble so cold it burned. 300 wolves watched from the tiered galleries, every alpha, beta, and elder of the northern summit, assembled under one roof for the first time in a decade. Beta Marcus Thane of the Iron Ridge Pack stood at the judgment podium, his jaw set, his dark eyes empty of everything they had once promised her. And beside him stood Vivienne, his chosen mate, golden-haired, wolf-strong, draped in ceremonial white like a bride at a funeral. Marcus did not look at Alara. He looked through her. And when the head elder asked if he had anything to say to the wolfless girl he had once called beloved, Marcus straightened his shoulders and spoke to the gallery as if she were already ash. She is nothing. She was always nothing. I reject this bond before the goddess and every wolf present. The gallery murmured approval. Vivienne smiled, and Alara felt the bond shatter inside her chest like a glass jaw struck with a hammer. But then the northern doors exploded inward. Not opened, exploded. Splinters of ancient oak scattered across the marble floor like shrapnel, and through the ruined doorway walked a man who made the air itself kneel. The Lycan King, Thuron Voss. His golden eyes swept the chamber once, twice, and then locked onto Alara with a force that stopped her heart between beats. He crossed the chamber floor in 6 strides, and every wolf in the gallery dropped to one knee, including Marcus, whose face had gone the color of wet cement. Thuron reached Alara. He lifted her chained wrists, studied the iron for exactly 1 second, then snapped both shackles with his bare hands. The sound echoed off the vaulted ceiling like a gunshot. Then he turned to Marcus, and the words he spoke were quiet enough to be intimate, loud enough for 300 wolves to carry for the rest of their lives. You rejected her before the whole council. Now watch me claim her before the whole world. The chains had not always been iron. Once they had been words. And words, Alara had learned, left deeper bruises. She had been born wolfless. That was the first and only fact that mattered in Iron Ridge, a mountain pack that measured value in fangs and fury and the volume of your howl on a winter ridge. Every pup awakened their wolf at 16. It was as certain as snow melt, as inevitable as the moon. You went to sleep a child and woke up doubled, your wolf rising inside you like a second heartbeat, fierce and warm and yours. Alara woke up alone. She remembered lying on the awakening pallet in the pack's ritual hall, surrounded by candles and the scent of pine resin, waiting for the surge that every elder had described. The heat, the pressure, the wild joy of something ancient uncoiling behind your ribs. Nothing. No wolf rose inside her. The candles guttered. The elders exchanged glances. And her mother, Sarah, who had been kneeling beside the pallet with tears of anticipation in her eyes, went very still. They tested Alar 3 more times over the following weeks. Herbs, rituals. A forced shift attempt that left her vomiting on the forced floor while the pack healer shook his head. Wolfless. The word spread through Einrich like a plague. Wolfless meant hollow. Wolfless meant cursed. Wolfless meant that something fundamental was missing from your blood, your soul, the architecture of your being. In a world where your wolf was your identity, your protection, your voice in the pack chorus, being wolfless was not a condition. It was an erasure. They gave her the collar on her 17th birthday. Thin black iron, no wider than a finger, fitted snug against the base of her throat. It carried no enchantment. It did not need one. Every wolf nose within 100 yards could read the collar's message. This one is incomplete. Do not bond. Do not touch. Do not waste your time. Her mother fought the collar. Sarah had been a healer, a quiet woman with dark hair and steady hands, who knew the name of every herb that grew between the river stones. She had argued before Alpha Thane, Marcus's father, that wolflessness was dormancy, not absence, that Alara's wolf was sleeping, not dead, that given time and the right conditions, something extraordinary might still awaken. Alpha Thane had listened with the patient expression of a man humoring a child, then denied the appeal and reassigned Sura to the outer cabins, the cluster of drafty structures at the pack's edge where the disgraced and the diminished were housed. 6 months later, Sarah was dead. A fever, they said. a fever that the pack healer could have treated if anyone had bothered to check on a wolfless girl's mother living alone at the edge of the territory. Alara found her in the morning, already cold, her fingers curled around a small pendant on a leather cord. A river stone, smooth and dark, shot through with a single vein of silver that caught the light like a buried star. Alara had taken the pendant and put it around her neck, tucking it beneath the iron collar where the metal could not touch it. The stone was always warm, even in the deepest winter, even when the cabin walls groaned with frost and Alara's breath crystallized before it left her lips. The pendant carried heat. Her mother's heat. Hold it when you are afraid, Sarah had whispered once, years before the collar, before the outer cabins, before the fever stole her voice. That warmth is not mine, Alora. It is yours. You just do not know it yet. After Sarah's death, Alara was moved from the outer cabins to the utility crawl space beneath the packhouse kitchen. A narrow room with a ceiling so low she could not stand upright, a straw pallet on the packed earth floor, a single lantern that ate through oil faster than she could earn it. She was assigned to the scullery. Pots, floors, laundry, firewood. The work that wolves with wolves considered beneath them. She scrubbed until her knuckles split and bled. She hauled water from the well in buckets that left welts across her palms. She ate what was left after the pack ate, which most nights meant bread ends and cold potato soup with the grease congealed on top. But she also healed, quietly, secretly. In the hours after midnight when the kitchen above her went silent, Alara ground herbs the way her mother had taught her. Poultices for the Omega children who scraped their knees and were too afraid of the healer to ask for help. Tinctures for the elderly wolves whose joints ached with the altitude. Sobs for the she-wolves who came to her back door with bruises they did not want to explain. She asked nothing in return, they gave nothing. But they came, and that was enough. It was enough until Marcus Thane, the alpha son, was everything Alara was not. Wolf-strong, confident, built like a weapon someone had decided to dress in expensive clothes. He had noticed Alara on a Tuesday in October, the kind of crisp blue sky day that made the mountain look like a painting. She had been gathering yarrow by the stream, her collar hidden beneath a high-necked shawl, and Marcus had appeared on the opposite bank with his patrol unit and looked at her, actually looked at her, for the first time in the 4 years since her awakening failed. Something had passed between them, a flicker, an electric tug beneath her ribs that made her drop the yarrow and press her hand to her chest. Marcus had felt it too. She saw it in the way his pupils widened, the way his nostrils flared, the way his patrol wolves exchanged uneasy glances behind his back. The bond. Fated. Undeniable. The goddess's own signature written across two souls in ink that could not be forged. For 3 months it had been secret and miraculous. Marcus would come to the kitchen after dark, tap twice on the crawlspace door, and Alara would open it to find him crouching in the flour dust with that crooked grin that made her forget every cruel word she had ever swallowed. He brought her food, real food, roasted chicken and honey bread, and once, impossibly, a blood orange he had traded for across the border. He told her she was beautiful. He told her that her wolflessness did not matter, that the bond was proof enough, that when he became alpha, he would remove her collar and make her his Luna, and the whole pack would see what he saw. She had believed him. Goddess forgive her. She had believed every word. The council summit was held every 10 years. Every pack in the Northern Territory sent their alpha, their beta, their elders to the great stone chamber at the base of Mount Varick. 300 wolves under truce to negotiate borders, settle disputes, and renew the old oaths. Marcus had been promoted to beta 6 weeks before the summit, his father stepping aside due to age. It was Marcus's first official appearance before the northern packs, and he had been preparing for weeks, rehearsing speeches, selecting ceremonial attire, rooming Vivian, the daughter of a neighboring alpha, as his public companion. Alara had not been invited. She had not expected to be. The wolfless did not attend summits. But Marcus had come to her crawlspace the night before departure and taken her hand and said, "I will announce our bond at the summit. Before every alpha in the north, no one will be able to challenge it." She had cried. She had pressed her face into his chest and felt his heartbeat, and the bond humming between them like a plucked string, and she had thought, this is it. This is the moment the collar stops meaning anything. She was wrong. They brought her to the council chamber on the second day, not in ceremonial dress, and the torn kitchen shift she had been wearing when two of Marcus's guards appeared at the crawlspace door and dragged her up the stairs without explanation. They shackled her wrists. They marched her through corridors filled with wolves who stared and whispered. They pushed her through the chamber doors into the blinding light of 300 assembled gazes. Marcus was already at the podium. Vivienne was beside him in white, and Alara understood. The head elder read the charges. Unauthorized bonding with a ranked wolf, concealment of wolfless status during courtship, manipulation of a beta through false claims of fated connection. Each accusation landed like a fist. The gallery murmured. Some wolves laughed. Alara stood in her chains, and her torn shift, and felt the room contract around her until there was no air left. She looked at Marcus. One look. That was all she could manage. He was already looking away. The rejection was formal. Words spoken before witnesses in the old tongue, then repeated in common speech for the gallery's satisfaction. Marcus's voice did not shake. His hands did not tremble. He spoke with the clear, practiced cadence of a man who had been rehearsing his betrayal for weeks. She is nothing. She was always nothing. I reject this bond before the goddess and every wolf present. The bond broke. Alara felt it tear free from the place behind her ribs where it had lived for 3 months, and the pain was so absolute, so total, that she dropped to her knees on the marble and heard a sound come from her own throat that she did not recognize. Not a scream, not a sob. Something deeper, something that belonged to the wolf she did not have. The gallery applauded, and then the doors exploded. She did not know what he was, not at first. Her vision was blurred with pain, her ears ringing from the bond's severance, and the figure moving through the ruined doorway was too large, too bright, too impossibly present to be anything she had a name for. She registered gold, eyes like molten amber, like sunrise trapped in glass. She registered scent, rain on granite, thunder on the edge of arrival. Something ancient and green and alive like the oldest tree in the deepest forest, the one that remembered when there were no wolves at all. Every wolf in the gallery dropped. Not gradually, not with the reluctant deference of politics. They dropped as if the floor had been pulled from beneath them, 300 wolves on their knees in a single wave, and the silence that followed was so complete Alara could hear the candles breathing. Thurin Voss, the Lycan king, ruler of the 8 territories, first blood of the original line. He was not supposed to be here. The Lycan king did not attend regional summits. It was beneath the crown, a matter for lesser wolves and lesser disputes. But here he was, filling the doorway like a storm that had decided to become a man, and his golden eyes were locked onto Alara with an expression she could not decode. It was fierce. It was tender. It was furious and reverent and absolutely certain, all at once, as if he had been searching for something his entire life and had just found it chained and bleeding on a marble floor. He crossed the chamber in 6 strides. Each footfall echoed, each echo carried weight. He reached Alara where she knelt, and the heat that rolled off him was staggering, not temperature but presence, the gravitational pull of a wolf so powerful that the air itself bent in accommodation. He looked at her chains. His jaw tightened. The sound the shackles made when he broke them was not dramatic. It was precise, 2 clean snaps, like dry branches stepped on in a quiet forest. The iron fell away from her wrists and clattered on the marble, and Alara stared at her own freed hands as if she had never seen them before. Theron crouched in front of her. This close, she could see the scar that ran along his left temple, thin and silver, disappearing into his hairline. She could see the way his golden eyes were not uniform but layered, darker at the edges, lighter near the pupil, like rings in ancient wood. He reached toward her collar, slowly. His hand stopped an inch from the iron. "May I?" he said. His voice was low, quiet, the kind of quiet that had nothing to do with softness and everything to do with control. A voice that could command armies or whisper secrets, and right now it was asking permission from a wolfless girl in a torn shift on a cold marble floor. Alara's pendant burned against her chest. The river stone pulsed. Once. Twice. A heartbeat that was not hers. She nodded. Thuron's fingers closed around the collar. He snapped it like paper. The two pieces fell, and the sound they made as they hit the floor silenced every whisper in the gallery. Air touched Alara's throat. Clean air. Free air. She gasped, and her hand flew to her neck. Fingers finding the raw groove the iron had pressed into her skin for years, and the gasp became a shudder that moved through her entire body, like a fault line releasing. Theron stood. He held the broken collar in his fist and turned to face the chamber, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of crowns and centuries, and the absolute certainty of a wolf who had never in his life been told no. Who put this collar on her? Silence. I asked a question. Marcus stood. To his credit, or perhaps to his stupidity, he stood. His face was gray. Vivian had retreated 3 steps behind him, her ceremonial white now seeming less like a bride's garment and more like a surrender flag. Your Majesty, Marcus began, she is wolfless. The collar is pack law for all. She is my mate. The words fell like a blade. 300 wolves inhaled simultaneously. Marcus's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. He looked like a man trying to breathe underwater. That is not possible, he whispered. She has no wolf. The bond cannot. The bond does not require your understanding, Thuron said. Only your compliance. He turned back to Alara. He extended his hand, palm up, the way you offer something precious, to someone who has been taught that their hands are not clean enough to receive. Come with me, he said, or stay. The choice is yours, the first real choice anyone has given you, I suspect. Alara looked at his hand. She looked at the broken collar on the floor. She looked at Marcus, who stood frozen at the podium with his status and his chosen mate and his practiced speeches, and she felt something shift inside her chest. Not the bond, something older. Something that had been sleeping in the place where her wolf should have been, curled around the warmth of a river stone and a dead mother's whisper. She took his hand. The gallery erupted. The journey to Ironhold took 3 days by the King's Road. Theron's convoy was spared by royal standards, 12 riders, a supply wagon, no banners. He rode at the front, on a black horse that was nearly as enormous as he was, and Alara rode beside him on a gray mare that one of the soldiers had given up without question. She did not speak for the first day. Thuron did not press her. He rode in silence, occasionally glancing her way with those layered gold eyes, and when they stopped for the night, he had a separate tent erected for her, warm with furs and a small iron stove, and he left her alone. She lay in the dark and pressed her mother's pendant against her breastbone and tried to understand what was happening. The bond. She could feel it. Not the way she had felt Marcus's bond, that electric pull, that desperate yearning. This was different. This was deeper. It lived not behind her ribs, but in her marrow, in the architecture of her bones, as if her body had been built around the space where this connection was always meant to reside. It terrified her. The second day she found her voice. Why were you at the summit? Theron glanced at her. They were riding through a pine corridor, the trees so tall, their canopies formed a cathedral ceiling of green and shadow. Sunlight fell in slats across the path. I received word that a wolfless woman was going to be publicly tried before the Northern Council, he said. The charges were absurd. I came to intervene. You came for me specifically? I came for justice. I found you. He paused. The distinction matters, but only slightly. Alara studied his profile, the scar at his temple, the hard line of his jaw, the way he held the reins with the loose, easy grip of someone who controlled things not through force, but through the simple assumption that they would obey. You said I am your mate, she said. You are. I have no wolf. I am aware. Then how? The bond does not originate in the wolf, Alara. It originates in the soul. The wolf amplifies it, carries it, gives it teeth and voice. But the source is deeper. Your soul called to mine across 300 miles of mountain and forest. I heard it the way you hear thunder before you see the storm. Not with my ears, with my blood. She was quiet for a long time. The last man who claimed me as his mate rejected me before 300 wolves. Theron turned to look at her fully, and his golden eyes held something she had not expected. Not anger, not pity, understanding. The deep, scarred understanding of someone who knew what it meant to carry a wound that the world insisted was not real. Then he was a fool, Theron said. And I am not. The third night they camped beside a river. The water was glacial, running fast and clear over stones that glinted silver in the moonlight. Alara sat by the fire, wrapped in a fur cloak that smelled like Theron, because everything near him eventually did rain on granite, something green and ancient. He sat across from her, feeding branches to the flames. I need you to know something, Alara said. He waited. I will not be collected. I will not be a prize someone won by breaking someone else's chains. If I stay with you, it is because I choose to, not because a bond told me to. Not because you are king. Something moved in Theron's expression. The crack in the granite again, brief and devastating, and Alara realized it was not a crack at all. It was a door, one he only opened for her. I would not want it any other way, he said. The fire crackled. The river ran. Alara reached across the space between them and placed her hand on his. His skin was warm, almost feverishly so, and the bond hummed between their palms like a tuning fork struck against the spine of the world. He turned his hand over, closed his fingers around hers. Held on. Your pendant, he said quietly. May I see it? Alara hesitated, then drew the river stone from beneath her collar, the ghost of the collar, the place where her skin still bore its groove. The stone caught the firelight, and the silver vein inside it blazed to life, a thread of liquid light running through the dark rock like a river through bedrock. Theron's breath caught. Do you know what this is? He asked. My mother's. She gave it to me before she died. Your mother, Theron said slowly, gave you a heart seed. A what? A heart seed. The core of a silver root tree. There are perhaps 6 left in the known world. They were used by the original bloodline, my bloodline, to awaken dormant wolves. Alara, the stone is not a keepsake. It is the reason your wolf is not woken. It has been holding her, protecting her, keeping her dormant until you were safe enough to survive the awakening. Alara stared at the stone. The silver vein pulsed. Once, twice. A heartbeat. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. That warmth is not mine. It is yours. My mother knew, Alara whispered. Your mother, Theron said, was not a simple healer. The fire crackled and the stone pulsed, and Alara felt the thing inside her chest stir. Not a wolf, not yet, but something that was beginning after years of patient silence to open its eyes. Ironhold was a fortress carved into the face of a granite mountain, its towers rising from the living rock like the teeth of some ancient beast. It was enormous, cold, wind-swept, and when Alara rode through its gates, she felt the weight of centuries press against her skin like a physical thing. The court was not welcoming. She had not expected it to be. A wolfless woman, arriving on the arm of the Lycan king, was a scandal wrapped in a mystery, wrapped in a political crisis. The nobles stared. The advisors whispered. The she-wolves of the court examined her with eyes that calculated threat and weakness simultaneously. But Theron was granite, utterly, immovably granite. He introduced Alara to the court as his recognized mate. He assigned her quarters adjoining his own. He placed a guard detail at her door, not to contain her, but to protect her. And when his chief advisor, a silver-haired wolf named Lord Halden, suggested that the bonding be delayed until Alara's status could be verified, Theron looked at him with those gold eyes and said, Her status is at my side. Verify that. The confrontation came 3 weeks later. Alara had known it would. You did not break a bond, humiliate a woman before 300 wolves, and then let the story end. Stories like hers demanded symmetry. What was broken in public had to be mended in public. What was stolen before witnesses had to be returned before witnesses. Marcus came to Ironhold. He came under the flag of diplomatic petition, which meant Theron was obligated by ancient law to receive him in the throne room, in full court, before every noble and soldier and servant who filled the great hall. 300 wolves again, Alara noted. The goddess apparently had a sense of structure. Marcus walked the center aisle with Vivienne 2 steps behind him. He wore his beta's insignia and a new leather coat, and his face had the determined blankness of a man who had practiced not showing fear. He stopped before the raised platform where Theron sat on the granite throne, and Alara stood at his right hand in a dress the color of storm clouds, her mother's pendant visible at her throat. The silver vein caught the torch light and drew tiny stars across her collarbone. Marcus knelt. He spoke his petition with formal precision. He argued that the bond between himself and Alara had been legitimately severed, that her wolfless status rendered any subsequent claiming irregular, that the king's attachment was, perhaps, the result of magical manipulation by the heartseed. He spoke for 7 minutes. Theron let him finish. Then the king stood. He descended the 3 stone steps from the throne with the unhurried patience that Alara had come to understand was not patience at all, but the measured restraint of a wolf who could end the conversation at any moment and was choosing, deliberately, not to. "You rejected her," Theron said. Marcus stiffened. The bond was. "You rejected her before 300 wolves. You called her nothing. You let them chain her and drag her across a marble floor in a torn shift, while you stood at a podium with another woman and rehearsed your cruelty like a speech. Your Majesty, I was not finished." The hall went silent. Even the torches seemed to hold their breath. "You put a collar on her," Theron said, and his voice dropped, not in volume but in temperature, until each word was a shard of ice. "You took a woman with a heartseed around her neck, a woman carrying a dormant wolf of the original bloodline, and you treated her like she was broken. Like she was less, like she was something to be discarded when she became inconvenient." Marcus's face drained of color. "Original bloodline, that is not. Her mother was Sarah Voss." The name hit the hall like a thunderclap. Whispers erupted. Lord Halden gripped the arm of his chair. Even the soldiers shifted. "Sarah Voss," Theron repeated. "My father's youngest sister, exiled 30 years ago for bonding with a wolfless male outside the royal line. She disappeared into the northern territories. She changed her name. She raised her daughter in secret because she knew what the court would do to a half-blood with a dormant wolf." Alara's hand went to her pendant. The stone burned. Her mother's face flashed in her memory, not the fever-wasted face at the end, but the earlier face, the strong face, the face that had known exactly what she was and what her daughter carried and had loved them both enough to hide it. "Alara is not wolfless," Theron said. "She has never been wolfless. She is dormant. And the thing that has been sleeping inside her is older and more powerful than any wolf in this room, including mine." He turned to Laratha. "Show them," he said softly. "If you are ready." Alara looked at the hall. 300 wolves staring back at her. Marcus on his knees, his practiced composure crumbling. Vivienne retreating toward the doors. Lord Halden leaning forward, and Theron, her mate, her king, standing beside her with absolute faith in his golden eyes. She reached for the pendant, wrapped her fingers around the warm stone, closed her eyes, her mother's voice one last time. "You carry something extraordinary inside you." The heartseed shattered. The sound was crystalline, musical, like a chandelier falling in slow motion. Silver light erupted from Alara's chest, not blinding but radiant, the deep luminous silver of moonlight on water, of starlight on snow, of every quiet, beautiful thing that survives the dark. And her wolf woke. It did not rise. It unfurled, like a flag in a sudden wind, like a fern frond opening to the sun, like something that had been folded very small and very tight for a very long time and was finally allowed to stretch. Alara felt it fill the spaces inside her that the collar had tried to deny, the spaces Marcus had tried to erase, the spaces the world had told her were empty. They were not empty. They had never been empty. They had been waiting. The wolf was silver. Pure, impossible silver, the color of the original bloodline, the color of the first wolves who walked when the world was young. It shone behind Alara's eyes, blazed through her skin, and every wolf in the throne room felt it. Not as power, as presence, the presence of something ancient and patient and indestructibly kind. Marcus dropped from his knees to his hands. His breath came in ragged gasps. His wolf, the wolf he'd been so proud of, cowered inside him like a pup before a storm. Thurin stepped beside Alara. He took her hand. The bond between them ignited fully for the first time, visible as a thread of gold and silver twisting together in the space between their palms, and the hall watched in silence as the Lycan King raised their joined hands and said 6 words that would be repeated in every pack across every territory for 100 years. Touch her again and you kneel. Marcus knelt. The entire hall knelt. And Alara stood in the throne room of Ironholt, with silver light pouring from her skin, and her wolf singing inside her chest, and her mother's shattered heart seed falling like stardust around her feet. And she did not kneel. She had done enough kneeling for one lifetime. She stood. 6 months later, the silver root tree was 3 feet tall. It had grown from the fragments of the heart seed, planted in a clay pot in the greenhouse at the eastern wing of Ironhold. Its bark was pale as bone. Its leaves shifted color with the seasons, copper in autumn, silver in winter, a deep luminous green, now that spring had arrived. Alara visited it every morning, pressing her palm to the trunk the way she used to press the pendant to her chest. The tree hummed when she touched it. A low, warm vibration. Her mother's warmth, her own warmth, the warmth of something that had survived the dark. Ironholt had changed, not dramatically. Castles do not pivot quickly, but in the small accumulating ways that over time become revolutions. Alara had stood before the court as Theron's recognized mate. Whether the skeptics, the sneers, the elaborate political maneuvering of nobles who believed a former wolfless scullery girl had no business near a throne. She survived it the same way she had survived the crawlspace, by refusing to become the thing they expected. She was not meek. She was not vengeful. She was present, clear-eyed, and unshakably kind. And one by one, the skeptics fell silent. Not because she convinced them, but because she outlasted them. The hollow collars were abolished within 3 months. Thurin signed the decree in the throne room, while Alara stood at his right hand. Across the northern territories, wolfless individuals were reclassified from outcasts protected members, subject to healer evaluation for dormancy, eligible for heartseed treatment where available, guaranteed the same rights as any shifted wolf. The decree had not been universally welcomed. 4 packs in the Western Range refused compliance. Thurin wanted to send soldiers. Alara asked to send letters. She wrote without accusation, without threats. She wrote about the crawlspace, the collar, the girl who ground herbs by candlelight for wolves who would not acknowledge her by daylight. She wrote about what it felt like to believe you were broken and then discover you had been whole all along, just waiting for someone to stop telling you otherwise. 3 of the 4 packs complied within a month. The 4th was still holding out, but their wolfless members had begun arriving at Ironholt's gates, thin and quiet and blinking in the sunlight. Alara met each one personally. She held their hands. She said, "You are not hollow. You never were. It was not enough." She knew that. Laws change faster than hearts. But it was a start. Marcus had not contested again. Reports from Iron Ridge were consistent. He ruled adequately, kept his borders, did not speak of Alara. Vivian had departed the pack 2 months after the Ironholt confrontation. No replacement was announced. Alara sometimes thought of him and felt the old ache, not of love, but of possibility. The person he might have been if his pride had been smaller than his heart. She hoped he would find his way. She did not wait for it. This morning, the greenhouse was warm with early light. Alara knelt beside the silver root tree and pressed her palm against the bark. The hum traveled up her arm to her chest and settled into the space where her wolf resided. Awake, calm, a steady silver presence that had become as natural as breathing. "You are up early." Theron stood in the doorway. Sleep clothes, dark-haired, disordered. Gold eyes soft with the particular warmth he reserved for mornings when the world was quiet and belonged only to them. "The tree is growing a new branch," Alara said. He crossed to her, crouched beside her, studied the pale shoot emerging from the trunk's upper fork. "It knows spring is here. We all do." Thurin slid his arm around her waist. Alara leaned into him, his warmth, his scent, the steady drum of his heartbeat against her back. Through the bond, she felt what he felt. Contentment so deep it was almost geological. A love that did not perform or demand but simply existed. Like bedrock, like the root system of a very old tree. Alara thought of the girl in chains. The marble floor, the iron collar, the river stone clutched like a prayer in a pocket no one thought to search. That girl was not gone. She lived inside Alara the way the wolf did. A part of the whole. A chapter in a story that kept unfolding. Alara would not erase her. She would carry her forward gently, the way you carry a candle through a dark hallway. Carefully, so the flame survives. Outside the greenhouse, the fortress was waking. Footsteps in distant corridors, the clatter of kitchens, the low murmur of guards changing shift. A world spinning on, wolves running, howling, living their complicated, beautiful, imperfect lives. Alara kissed Thuron's jaw, the angle where the bone met the soft skin beneath his ear, and stood. "Come on," she said. "There is work to do." She left the greenhouse with the king beside her and the tree humming at her back. And the morning light fell across them both like a blessing. Warm and silver and gold and new. The collar was gone. The wolf was awake. The heart seed had bloomed, and the story was not over. But for the first time, Alara believed the next chapter would be kind. Thank you for listening. If this story made your heart race, your eyes sting, or your soul whisper yes, then you felt exactly what Alara felt when her wolf finally unfurled after all those years of silence. That feeling that is the magic of stories like this, and we have so many more waiting for you. Hit that like button if Theron's words, "Touch her again and you kneel," sent chills down your spine. Subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss another tale of fated mates, broken bonds, and wolves who refuse to stay silent. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the collar is never the end of the story. And drop a comment below. Tell me, which moment hit you the hardest? Was it the collar breaking? Was it her mother's secret? Was it the moment 300 wolves knelt before the girl they once called nothing? Let me know. Your pack is here. Welcome home.